Imagine this. You've worked your whole life with your bare hands, building homes for strangers, laying bricks in the scorching sun, and dreaming that one day, just one day, you might finally build a little corner of peace for yourself. But instead of comfort, instead of gratitude, you find yourself standing outside your own home with nothing but a torn backpack, a broken heart, and a voice screaming inside your head, "Why me?" This is where his story begins. Not with success, not with glory, but with betrayal. But before fate could rise, it had to let him fall. And it all began the night he lost everything. His name was Marcus. A man whose hands were calloused from endless construction work, whose clothes always carried the dust of cement, and whose eyes still carried a faint sparkle of hope. Hope that life would get better. For years, he believed hard work was the key to happiness. He believed loyalty was enough to keep love alive. But Marcus was wrong. One cold evening, as he dragged himself home from a long shift, sweat dripping down his neck and dust sticking to his skin, he unlocked the door only to find his bags already packed. His partner, someone he thought would stand by him no matter what, stood there with arms folded, eyes filled with anger and bitterness. "You need to go, Marcus. I can't do this anymore. You're going nowhere, and I'm done wasting my life." Her words cut deeper than any blade. His heart pounded, but he couldn't believe what he was hearing. All those years of sacrifice, of coming home tired but smiling, of giving everything he had, even when he had nothing, meant nothing now. He tried to reason. He begged for just one more chance, but her face was like stone. She grabbed his arm, dragged him toward the door, and with one final push, she cast him out of the very place he called home. The door slammed. Silence followed. Marcus stood outside, clutching his bag, his chest heavy with pain. He didn't shout. He didn't fight back. He just stood there, frozen. Because when the person you love most tells you that you're nothing, it feels like the whole world agrees. That night, Marcus walked aimlessly through the streets. Neon lights flickered. Around him, couples laughed as they passed by, and families sat together at restaurants sharing meals. But Marcus had nowhere to go. He was just another man on the sidewalk, unseen, unwanted, and unloved. The hours dragged on. His stomach growled, but hunger was the least of his worries. His heart ached more than his body ever could. Every step he took replayed the same memory. The look on her face when she threw him out. The voice in his head whispered, "You're worthless. You're nobody." By midnight, Marcus found himself sitting on the cold steps of a construction site. He leaned against the wall, the smell of fresh paint and cement filling the air. He pulled out his old phone, cracked and nearly dead, scrolling through messages that no longer brought him comfort. Friends had disappeared, family was distant, and now even love had betrayed him. He had nothing left. And yet, in that very moment of despair, life was quietly preparing its most shocking twist. Marcus didn't know it yet, but the man sitting broken on those concrete steps wasn't just another forgotten worker. He was someone history had overlooked, someone destiny had kept waiting. Beneath the layers of pain, dust, and hopelessness, Marcus carried a bloodline, an inheritance that would soon shake the world. But for now, all he could do was stare at the dark sky and wonder if tomorrow was even worth facing. He finally drifted into a restless sleep, the city lights glowing faintly around him. In his dreams, he saw himself climbing scaffolding, hammer in hand, reaching for the top of a building that never seemed to end. But just as he reached the final step, the ground disappeared beneath him, and he fell. Marcus woke up with a start, his chest heaving, sweat dripping from his forehead. It wasn't just a dream. It was his life, a constant climb, a constant struggle, and always, always the fall. As The first rays of dawn touched the city. Marcus stood up, his back stiff, his eyes tired but still searching. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know what waited for him. All he knew was that the world had taken everything from him, and now he had nothing left to lose. But sometimes, losing everything is the only way to prepare for something far greater, and for Marcus, the greatest secret of his life was about to find him. The night Marcus spent on those cold construction steps was long, unforgiving, and silent. Every sound, the passing cars, the echo of footsteps, even the faint sirens in the distance, felt like reminders that the city moved on without him. By dawn, he was just another shadow among millions, a man no one would notice. His body ached. From the concrete floor, his stomach twisted with hunger, but none of it compared to the storm inside his chest. He replayed her words again and again, as if they were carved into his mind. "You're a failure. You're going nowhere." Marcus rose slowly, his legs stiff, his spirit heavier than the bag on his back. He started walking again, not toward any place in particular, just away from her voice, away from the memories, away from the life he thought he had built. But life has a way of finding us, even when we're running from it. By midday, Marcus found himself sitting on the edge of a fountain in the heart of the city. The water sparkled under the sun. Children laughed as they tossed coins into it, and families passed by without sparing him a glance. He pulled out his cracked phone, scrolling through the contacts he hadn't called in years. His finger hovered over one number, his mother's, but he didn't press it. What would he say? That he had lost everything? That he was sleeping on concrete steps while the world moved on? He shoved the phone back into his pocket, his jaw tight. Pride was the only thing he had left, and even that felt fragile. Then something strange happened. A man in a dark suit walked past, then doubled back. He glanced at Marcus, almost as if confirming something, before reaching into his briefcase. Without a word, he pulled out a white envelope and handed it to Marcus. "For you," the man said. His tone was calm, certain as if he had been waiting. For this moment, Marcus blinked, confused. "What is this?" "You'll understand," the man replied. And before Marcus could ask another question, he was gone, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow swallowed by daylight. Marcus stared at the envelope. His name was written across the front in bold, unfamiliar handwriting. His fingers trembled as he tore it open. Inside was a neatly folded letter. The words made his heart skip a beat. "You are being summoned regarding matters of inheritance. Please report to the address below at the given time. Your presence is required." Marcus almost laughed. Inheritance? Him? The only thing he had ever inherited was hardship. This had to be some kind of mistake, or a cruel prank. Yet the weight of the paper, the official seal at the bottom, and the precision of the address made it feel too real to ignore. For hours, he sat by the fountain, staring at that letter, torn between disbelief and curiosity. He had nothing left to lose, so why not go? By evening, Marcus stood before the address written on the paper. It was an old office building, quiet and unremarkable, tucked between two towering skyscrapers. The kind of place you'd walk past 1,000 times and never notice. He hesitated at the door, his heart pounding. His life had already been turned upside down once. Could this letter be the beginning of something even stranger? Inside, the air smelled of old wood and paper. A single desk stood at the far end of the room, and behind it sat an elderly man with silver hair and sharp eyes. He wore a dark suit, his posture upright, his presence commanding. "Marcus," the man said, his voice firm yet gentle. "You came." Marcus swallowed hard. "Who are you? Why did you send this letter?" The man folded his hands. "My name is Robert. I am a legal representative, And I've been waiting for you." Marcus frowned. "Waiting for me? Why?" Robert slid a file across the desk. "Because, Marcus, you are not who you think you are. You have lived as a worker, a struggler, a man abandoned by love. But beneath all of that, you are the lost, heir of a fortune greater than this city has ever seen." Marcus froze, his breath caught in his throat. "That's impossible. I don't have anything. I've never had anything." Robert opened the file, revealing documents, photographs, and signatures Marcus didn't recognize, but all tied to a single name. His name. "This isn't a mistake," Robert continued. "Your bloodline connects you to an empire long thought forgotten, and now, that empire belongs to you." Marcus's head spun. His heart raced as if it might tear out of his chest. He wanted to deny it, to laugh it off as a cruel joke. But the evidence lay before him, undeniable and heavy. For a long moment, he said nothing. He stared at the papers, his hands trembling, his voice breaking when he finally spoke. "Why me? Why now?" Robert leaned forward, his eyes unwavering. "Because destiny always finds its way. And yours, Marcus, has just begun." That night, Marcus walked out of the office in a daze. The letter that had found him at the fountain had just rewritten everything he thought he knew about his life. He wasn't just a broken man with nowhere to go. He wasn't just a construction worker abandoned by the woman he loved. He was an heir, and the world had no idea what was about to happen. Marcus walked through the city streets that night as if the world around him had turned unreal. Neon lights blurred into streaks of color, voices echoed without meaning, and every step felt heavier than the last. In his hand, he still clutched the file Robert had given him, the file that claimed he was heir to $1 trillion empire. $1 trillion. The number itself sounded like fiction. It was bigger than anything Marcus had ever imagined. He had once counted coins just to buy bread. Now strangers were telling him he owned more than entire nations. His mind spun in circles. How could this be real? Was this a trick? A scam? Or worse? Was someone setting him up? Marcus ducked into a dimly lit diner at the edge of the city. The smell of coffee and fried food filled the air as he slid into a booth. He dropped the file onto the table and stared at it like it might explode. His reflection in the greasy window looked back at him. Tired eyes, dirt still clinging to his shirt, a man who belonged more to construction sites than to boardrooms. He whispered to himself, "This can't be me." The waitress approached, setting down a cup of coffee. "Rough night?" she asked, her tone casual. Marcus forced a smile, something like that. If only she knew. He opened the file again, flipping through the pages. There were photos of people he didn't recognize, documents signed by names he'd never heard of, and records that traced back generations. And yet, his name appeared. Again and again, tied to those records by bloodlines and signatures. Robert's voice echoed in his head. "You are the lost heir of a fortune greater than this city has ever seen." Marcus shook his head, rubbing his temples. He couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. How could the same man who had just been thrown out like trash suddenly be worth more than the world's richest companies combined? The memories of his past clashed violently with this new truth. He remembered his childhood. Small apartments, second-hand clothes, his mother working double shifts just to keep food on the table. He remembered nights of going to bed hungry, of patching up shoes with tape because they couldn't afford new ones. He remembered being told again and again that he would never escape the life he was born into. And yet here it was, proof that escape had always been written into his story. Proof that his suffering had been hiding a secret bigger than his imagination. But Marcus didn't feel joy. He felt fear. The fear grew stronger the more he thought about it. If he truly was this heir, Then why had no one come for him before? Why? Had he lived his entire life in pain while this empire existed? Who had hidden this from him, and why? Questions piled up like bricks, building a wall around his thoughts. What if this inheritance came with enemies? What if the reason he had been lost was because someone wanted him gone? His chest tightened. He looked around the diner, suddenly suspicious of every face. Was someone watching him right now? By the time Marcus left the diner, the city felt colder. He stuffed the file into his backpack, zipped it tight, and pulled the straps close against his shoulders. He needed answers. The next morning, he returned to the office where he had met Robert. The old man was waiting for him, as if he had known Marcus would come back. "You read the documents," Robert said calmly. Marcus dropped the backpack onto the desk. "I read them, but reading and believing aren't the same thing." Robert nodded. "Of course. Truth often feels heavier than lies." Marcus leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Why me? Why hide this from me my whole life? Why let me suffer? If I was meant to be this heir?" Robert's eyes softened. "Because the empire was not ready, and neither were you. Great power is a burden, Marcus, and those who carried it before you nearly destroyed themselves with it. You had to be broken first. You had to know loss, struggle, and betrayal so that when this moment came, you would never take it for granted." Marcus stared at him, speechless. His heart pounded with a mix of anger and awe. Was this man telling the truth, or just spinning a story meant to control him? Robert continued, his voice low and deliberate. "You are the last direct bloodline. The empire is waiting, but it is fragile. Some do not want you to claim it. And if they discover you've been found—" He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "They will come for you." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. Suddenly, the $1 trillion inheritance didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a trap. For the next several days, Marcus lived in a fog. He wandered the city during the day, returning each night to the small apartment Robert had arranged for him. He studied the documents again and again, trying to connect the dots, trying to find some thread of truth that could convince him this wasn't all a lie, but the evidence was overwhelming. Every record, every photograph, every signature pointed to one impossible conclusion. Marcus wasn't just another broken man. He was someone the world had been waiting for. Still, doubt gnawed at him. Could a man like him, thrown away, forgotten, worthless in the eyes of those he loved, truly hold the key to unimaginable power? One night, Marcus stood at the window of his new apartment, staring down at the city below. Cars rushed past like rivers of light. Skyscrapers glowed like fire against the dark sky. Somewhere out there, people were fighting for scraps, just as he once had. Somewhere out there, his ex was living her life without a second thought about him. And here he was, holding the weight of an empire he didn't understand. He clenched his fists, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. "If this is real," he whispered, "then I'll never let anyone take it away from me." It was the first time Marcus felt something stronger than despair. Not joy, not relief, but determination. For the first time, he began to imagine what it would mean to stop being invisible, to stop being a failure, to take what destiny had kept hidden from him. But destiny is never claimed without battle. And Marcus was about to learn that inheriting $1 trillion didn't just change his life. It put a target on his back. The first sign came quietly. Marcus noticed it while walking home one evening, the kind of detail that most people would ignore. A black sedan parked across the street, windows tinted, engine off. He walked past it, without slowing down, but his instincts, the same instincts that had kept him safe on construction sites, that had warned him when a fight was about to break out, told him the car wasn't ordinary. The next night, the car was there again. By the third night, Marcus was sure he was being watched. He burst into Robert's office the following morning, slamming his hand on the desk. "Who are they?" he demanded. Robert didn't flinch. He looked up calmly, adjusting his glasses. "They know you've been found." "Who knows?" Marcus's voice shook with a mix of fear and anger. "The others," Robert replied, his tone grave. "The ones who fought to bury your name. The ones who would rather see this empire rot than pass into your hands." Marcus stared at him. His chest felt like it was closing in. "So what, you're saying they'll try to kill me?" Robert leaned back in his chair. "Not yet. First, they will test you. They want to see if you are strong enough to be a threat, or weak enough to be discarded." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Great. I just inherited $1 trillion and with it, a death sentence." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Every sound outside the apartment made him jump. Every passing car light painted shadows across the room that looked like figures moving closer. He gripped the file folder in his lap, as if the papers inside could protect him. The weight of responsibility pressed harder than ever. He wasn't just holding wealth. He was holding a war. The test came sooner than he expected. Marcus was on his way to a grocery store, trying to pretend life was normal when he felt it, footsteps following him. He turned down an alley, quickening his pace. The footsteps grew louder, faster. "Hey!" a voice called out behind him. Marcus turned just in time to see two men in dark jackets closing in. One of them grabbed his arm. "You, Marcus Hale!" His stomach dropped. "Don't know what you're talking about," Marcus lied, trying to pull free. The second man sneered. "Wrong answer." Before Marcus could react, the first man shoved him hard against the wall. Pain shot through his back as his head snapped to the side. "You think you can just walk back into this world? You don't belong here," the man hissed. Marcus's pulse pounded in his ears. He had been in fights before. Construction sites weren't exactly safe havens. But this was different. These men weren't drunk co-workers or petty thieves. They were hunters. For a second, Marcus thought this was the end. But then instinct took over. As the man leaned in closer, Marcus slammed his forehead into the attacker's nose. The man screamed, stumbling back with blood gushing down his face. Marcus spun, elbowing the second man in the ribs. For a moment, both attackers were stunned. Marcus ran. His lungs burned as he sprinted out of the alley, weaving through the streets. He didn't dare look back. He didn't stop until he was inside his apartment, slamming the door shut, his chest heaving. His reflection in the bathroom mirror showed wide, terrified eyes. His lip was bleeding. His shirt was torn. And yet, beneath the fear, he saw something else in his face. Survival. He called Robert immediately. "They came for me," Marcus gasped. "Two men. They knew my name. They told me I don't belong." Robert's silence on the other end of the line felt heavy. Finally, the old man said, "Then it has begun." "What has begun?" Marcus demanded. "The war for the empire," Robert answered. "And you, Marcus, you just passed the first test." Marcus frowned. "Test? They tried to kill me!" "No," Robert corrected. "They tried to scare you. If they wanted you dead, you wouldn't be speaking right now. They wanted to see if you'd run, and you didn't." Marcus sank onto the floor, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not ready for this." Robert's voice hardened. "You don't have the luxury of being ready. Every day you delay, they grow bolder. You must decide. Are you going to claim what is yours, or are you going to keep running until they bury you?" That night. Marcus couldn't shake Robert's words. For so long he had been invisible, powerless, discarded. Now, people were willing to spill blood just to keep him from rising. That meant he was dangerous. That meant he mattered. For the first time, Marcus began to understand the weight of his new identity. He wasn't just a construction worker who had lost everything. He was the man standing in the way of powerful forces, and they were already moving against him. As the city lights flickered outside his window, Marcus clenched his fists. The fear inside him was still there, but so was something stronger. Resolve. If they want to fight, he whispered into the night, they're going to get one. But he had no idea just how dark and ruthless that fight would become. Because the shadows that had begun to move against him weren't just testing him anymore. They were preparing for war. Marcus had never felt so out of place. The next morning, Robert led him through a set of heavy oak doors into a building that didn't look like it belonged in the city at all. No neon signs, no flashing billboards, just stone walls, towering columns, and silence that pressed down like the weight of history. This, Robert said as they walked inside, is where your family's true empire has been guarded for generations. Marcus swallowed hard. Empire? You keep saying that word like it's normal. I thought we were just talking about money. Robert gave him a look sharp enough to cut glass. Money is just paper. What you have inherited is control. The wry hallway stretched endlessly, lined with portraits of men and women whose eyes seemed to follow Marcus as he passed. Some wore crowns, others military uniforms, others sharp suits, but all of them had the same piercing expression, like they were still alive, judging him. Marcus felt small beneath their gaze. They don't look like the kind of people who would accept me. They don't have to accept you, Robert said, his voice echoing. They're gone. But the world they built, the companies, the land, the hidden accounts, the alliances, those remain. And now they are yours. They reached a massive steel vault at the end of the hall. Robert typed in a code, turned a key, then pressed his palm against a scanner. The heavy door groaned open. Inside was a room that Marcus could hardly believe. Rows of drawers, cabinets, and shelves stuffed with files, maps, and thick, leather-bound books. A digital wall displayed shifting numbers, bank accounts, stock markets, assets that flickered like constellations. Marcus's knees felt weak. All of this is mine? Yes, Robert said simply. But with it comes responsibility. Every number on that screen represents people, jobs, lives. You are not inheriting just wealth. You are inheriting power. And power always has enemies. As Marcus walked deeper into the vault, he saw documents stamped with names he recognized. Global, corporations, secret projects, even governments. This is insane, he whispered. I was fixing broken cranes a week ago. Now you're telling me I hold influence over things I can't even pronounce. Robert's hand landed on his shoulder. That is why they fear you. You were hidden all these years, Marcus, buried. They never thought you would surface. And now you have the chance to reclaim what was stolen. For a moment, Marcus felt dizzy. His ex's voice echoed in his head. You'll never be more than a failure. But standing here, in a room that pulsed with secrets worth more than gold. He felt something shift inside him. Maybe he was more. Maybe he always had been. That night, Marcus sat in his small apartment staring at the folder Robert had given him. Inside were instructions, keys, and encrypted codes. But there was also a letter. It was handwritten, the ink faded, but careful. At the top, for Marcus, when the time is right. His hands trembled as he opened it. Marcus, if you are reading this, then the bloodline has found you. You were hidden for your safety, but you were never meant to remain in the shadows. You carry not just my fortune, but my unfinished war. They will come for you. They will try to erase you, but you are stronger than you know. And when the day arrives, you must not run. You must rise. The letter was signed with a name Marcus barely remembered, his father. Tears blurred his vision. For years, Marcus had told himself he was unwanted, abandoned, thrown aside. But here, in shaky ink, was proof that someone had cared. Someone had believed in him. His chest tightened. "I won't run," he whispered into the empty room. "Not anymore." But the shadows were already closing in. Across the city, in a penthouse office filled with glass and steel, 3 figures studied photographs of Marcus on a glowing table. One showed him in the alley after the attack, another entering the stone building with Robert. "He knows," one of them muttered. Another leaned back, a cruel smile forming. "Then we accelerate. If he thinks he's ready to claim the empire, let's see how long he can hold it before it crushes him." The third figure said nothing. He simply pointed at Marcus's photograph and whispered, "Erase him." Meanwhile, Marcus's phone buzzed. A new message. No number, no name. Just one line. "You don't deserve what you've been given. Walk away before it's too late." His grip on the phone tightened. Fear rose in his chest, but this time it didn't control him. Instead, it turned into fuel. He looked out the window at the city alive with danger and possibility. "They want me gone," Marcus said softly. "But I'm not going anywhere." The empire was awakening, and so was he. But Marcus had no idea that the people moving against him weren't just wealthy rivals. They were predators who had built empires on ruin, who had erased men stronger than him. The real battle hadn't even started yet. And when it did, Marcus would discover that the cost of claiming ultimate wealth wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in blood. The city never truly slept. But on this night, Marcus did not hear the traffic, the laughter, or the hum of electricity that usually drowned his thoughts. All he could hear was the echo of his father's letter in his mind. "You must not run. You must rise." He sat at his kitchen table, the folder Robert had given him spread wide. Numbers, codes, names, things that once looked like nonsense, now felt like weapons. Every page whispered power but also danger. And then his phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message, last warning. "Leave or be buried." Marcus stared at the words for a long time. The old Marcus would have panicked, shut down, maybe even begged for a way out. But tonight, something inside him snapped into focus. He typed back a single line. "Come and try." The next morning, Robert arrived at his door, his face tight, with urgency. "They've already moved. 2 shell companies tried to transfer out a piece of your inheritance overnight. We stopped them, but they'll keep coming. You can't just sit back anymore." Marcus stood tall. "Then let's not. If they're coming after me, I'm coming after them." Robert studied him, the corner of his mouth twitching into the faintest smile. "Good. Then it's time for your first strike." They drove through back alleys to an unmarked building, guarded by men who looked like shadows in daylight. Inside, Marcus was introduced to a small team, loyalists his father had once trusted, now waiting for direction. "These people know the Empire better than anyone," Robert explained, "but they've been leaderless for years. If you want to claim your place, they need to see you command it." Marcus's hands trembled as the team turned their eyes on him. Men and women with hardened faces, scars, and eyes that carried secrets. They weren't here for money, they were here for loyalty, to the bloodline Marcus barely understood. He swallowed his fear and stepped forward. "I won't lie to you. A week ago, I was nothing but a construction worker. I don't know the codes, I don't know the rules, and I don't know the game these people are playing. But I do know one thing. I'm not going to let them erase me. If they want war, I'll give it to them. But I can't do it alone." A silence hung in the room. Then, slowly, one by one, heads nodded. Robert leaned closer. "Your father would be proud." The first strike came sooner than Marcus expected. Through encrypted files, Robert revealed one of the rival syndicate's vulnerabilities. A hidden offshore account funneling billions into bribes and illegal projects. If Marcus exposed it, he wouldn't just defend his inheritance, he'd cripple his enemies. Think carefully, Robert warned. Once you make this move, there's no going back. They will know you're not just a lost heir. You're a threat. Marcus looked at the glowing screen. His old self hesitated, but his new self pressed forward. Do it. The leak spread like wildfire. Within hours, headlines lit up across the financial world. Secret empire accounts exposed. Governments launched investigations. Markets trembled. And behind every headline was Marcus's unseen hand. For the first time, he felt the weight of his inheritance shift. Not as a burden, but as a weapon. But victory was short-lived. That night, as Marcus walked back to his apartment, a black SUV rolled up beside him. The doors flung open, and masked men leapt out. He barely had time to react before hands grabbed him. But Marcus wasn't the same man who once begged his ex for mercy. He fought, hard, a punch, a shove, an elbow to the ribs. The men were trained, but so was his will to survive. Just as one of them drew a blade, headlights flared at the end of the street. Another car screeched to a halt. Robert's team burst out, weapons drawn, scattering the attackers into the night. Breathless, Marcus leaned against the wall, his chest heaving. Robert grabbed his arm. You wanted to strike back? Congratulations. You've just declared war. Later, in the safety of a hidden safe house, Marcus stared at himself in the mirror. His face was bruised, his shirt torn, but his eyes burned with a new fire. The man looking back at him wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't a forgotten worker or a cast-off husband. He was something else, something his enemies had not expected. Robert entered quietly. They'll hit back harder. They'll try to scare you into silence, maybe even kill you. Marcus straightened his shoulders. Then let them come. I won't run. Across the city, in that same penthouse of glass and steel, the three figures studied the headlines with cold fury. He's bolder than we thought, one muttered. Another slammed a fist on the table. Then we crush him now. The third figure leaned forward, eyes gleaming like a predator. No, not yet. If we strike too quickly, we'll expose ourselves. Let him think he's winning. Let him rise higher. The higher he climbs, the harder the fall will be. He tapped Marcus's photo, his voice low and venomous. Soon, he'll learn that inheriting an empire is not the same as keeping it. That night, Marcus sat in silence, the city lights flickering outside the window. He remembered the letter, his father's words, the men who had tried to erase him and the enemies watching in the shadows. His fists clenched. This wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't even about survival. It was about destiny. And for the first time in his life, Marcus wasn't afraid of it. The empire was his. The war had begun, and he was ready to fight. The city was alive with storms. Lightning carved across the sky, thunder rolled through the steel towers, and rain hammered the streets as though nature itself sensed the war about to unfold. Marcus stood at the window of the safe house, staring into the chaos. His reflection looked sharper now, harder, stronger, alive with a fire he didn't recognize months ago. But beneath that fire was a truth he could no longer deny. This was not just about survival anymore. It was about legacy. Behind him, Robert entered quietly, his coat dripping from the storm. He placed a sealed envelope on the table. This was hidden in your father's private vault, Robert said. I wasn't sure if you were ready for it. But after everything, you need to see it. Marcus picked it up with trembling hands. Inside was a final letter, the paper yellowed but the words clear, sharp as a blade. My son, if you are reading this, then the empire has passed to you. But you must know the truth. This wealth is not clean. It was built in shadows, in wars, in betrayals. You cannot run from it. But you can choose to be the man who breaks the cycle. Remember, money can build walls, but honor builds kingdoms. Marcus closed his eyes, the weight of the words sinking deeper than any threat his enemies could make. For the first time, he understood what this battle really meant. He turned to Robert. It's time. No more hiding. No more half measures. I end this tonight. Robert gave a slow nod. Then you'll need to face them on their ground. The rivals had summoned him. A single message arrived at midnight. Penthouse. One chance to surrender. Marcus didn't hesitate. He arrived not as a victim, not as a forgotten worker, but as a man stepping into destiny. Robert and a small team waited in the shadows outside, ready if the meeting turned bloody. But Marcus insisted he would walk in alone. The elevator ride felt endless. Each floor that ticked upward carried memories of who he once was. The man left on the sidewalk by his ex, the man mocked by strangers, the man crushed under life's indifference. But when the doors slid open onto the penthouse, he stepped out, as someone else entirely. The room was lit with golden lamps, the storm raging through floor-to-ceiling windows. At the center of a long table sat the three figures who had hunted him from the start. Their eyes gleamed like predators who believed they still owned the night. One leaned back casually. Marcus, or should we call you Air? You've caused us quite a mess. Marcus didn't sit. He stood tall, rainwater dripping from his coat onto their polished floor. You tried to erase me. You failed. You tried to steal what's mine. You failed, and now you want me to surrender? The woman at the table smiled coldly. You're outnumbered, outgunned. You don't understand how deep this empire runs. You think one leak makes you powerful? You're a child holding matches in a burning house. Marcus's jaw tightened. Maybe, but I'm the child you couldn't kill, and I'm not holding matches. I'm holding fire. He reached into his coat and placed a small flash drive on the table. The third rival leaned forward. What's this? Marcus's voice was calm, steady. Every file my father left me, every account, every deal, every bribe. But not just yours, his, too. The truth of this entire empire. Tonight, the world sees it all, unless you walk away. For the first time, silence cut through their arrogance. Their faces shifted, not with fear, but with something sharper. Respect. But then the man on the left sneered. You wouldn't dare. That drive destroys your own inheritance. Marcus met his eyes. Then I'll build something new. Clean. My father gave me wealth, but he also gave me a choice. I choose not to be you. The storm outside roared louder. Lightning cracked, illuminating their faces in flashes of white. And then, violence. The eye. Sneering man lunged across the table, pulling a blade from his jacket. Marcus barely dodged as the glass table shattered under the strike. The others moved, the room erupting into chaos. But Marcus wasn't alone. The doors burst open as Robert's team stormed in, guns drawn, shouting orders. The penthouse became a battlefield, shouts, gunfire, fists colliding. Marcus fought with raw desperation, ducking, striking, surviving. At one point, the woman rival cornered him, pressing a pistol against his chest. Her eyes were ice. You're too much like your father, she hissed. He thought he could change things too, and look where he ended up. Marcus locked eyes with her, unflinching. No, I'm nothing like him. I'll do what he couldn't. And with a burst of strength, he twisted the weapon from her grip, turning the tide. Minutes felt like hours. But finally the fight ended. Robert's men subdued the rivals, binding them in the ruins of their empire. The penthouse, once filled with arrogance, now reeked of defeat. Breathless, Marcus stood amid the wreckage. His knuckles bled, his chest burned, but his spirit felt unbreakable. He walked to the shattered window, staring at the storm clearing over the city. Robert approached slowly, placing a hand on his shoulder. You did it. You broke them. Marcus shook his head. No, I broke the cycle. My father built an empire of shadows. They tried to bury me in it, but tonight I burned it down. He raised the flash drive, its tiny light flickering like a final ember of the old world. Without hesitation, he hurled it out the broken window. It vanished into the storm, swallowed by rain and lightning. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Marcus whispered almost to himself, "This city doesn't need another ruler in the shadows. It needs a man who walks in the light." Days later, the world buzzed with rumors. Some said the empire had collapsed. Some whispered the rivals had vanished. Others told legends of a lost heir who turned down $1 trillion to build something greater. Marcus never corrected them. He returned to the construction site where his story had begun. The boots on his feet were still worn, the calluses on his hands still rough. But now, when people passed him, they looked twice. Not because of wealth, but because of presence. He no longer walked like a forgotten man. He walked like someone who had faced the storm and survived. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Robert joined him on the site. "So, what now?" Marcus looked at the workers around him, men and women sweating, building, dreaming. He smiled, softly. "Now I build. Not empires of glass and steel, but lives. Futures. Something my father's money never understood." Robert nodded with quiet pride. "Then perhaps that's the true inheritance." Marcus looked toward the horizon, the fading sun painting the sky in gold. The storm was gone, the war was over, and for the first time in his life, Marcus felt free.